Okay, we're here at the studios of the Children's Coalition with Captain Michael Taylor, and we will begin his interview right now. Let's see. We have multiple segments, so we can take a break whenever you need after a segment, if you wouldn't mind. Today's date is December 30th, 2011. It is 1:08 p.m. Wow, I forgot to do that, the other one. Your birth date, sir?
It's October 3rd, 1959.
And your current address?
Current address residing at 8355 Woodsmere Drive. That's in West Palm Beach, Florida, 33412.
And by the way, you look great on.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice. You ever thought about a career in movies? Or
In broadcasting movies, I've been told that I got that Denzel Washington kind of look to me. You know?
That's what I was thinking. Okay. What branch did you serve?
United States Army.
And what rank?
Captain.
Okay. And, well, I don't know why they asked this millions of times. Where did you serve, sir?
Served in a number of different places. Upon commissioning at Tuskegee University, went through the ROTC programs. The commissioning went to my officer basic course at Fort McClellan, just outside of Anniston, Alabama, and spent several months there undergoing some rigorous training. Throughout our basic course, at that particular point in time, for all chemical officers to graduate, in addition to your coursework, you had to complete a 10-mile run. So that's why I say it's very, very rigorous. They really wanted us to be prepared because most chemical officers serve with combat units, i.e. the infantry, field artillery, and etc. Upon completion of my officer basic course, my first duty assignment was out at 7th Infantry Division out in beautiful Fort Ord, California. And I was the Division Artillery's chemical officer, serving under two commanders. The most memorable commander was General, well, he went on to become General. At that time, he was Colonel Fred A. Gordon, who was the first black commandant of cadets at West Point. Very prestigious, very knowledgeable, very interesting gentleman. And but served in that capacity for 29 months. After that, I was a chemical decontamination platoon leader, also serving at Fort Ord in California. And after the Fort Ord assignment, I went back for my chemical officer's advanced course back to Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama. And from there, we were overseas to Germany. And we served at Nellingen Kaserne, which is just outside of Stuttgart, Germany. And there I served on the staff of the 2nd Support Command, and also was the commander of the 11th Chemical Company in Nellingen, Germany, and then back on staff and rotating back to the States and then leaving the service.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, our first segment, we're going to ask questions that kind of jog your memory a little bit.
Okay.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I volunteered wholeheartedly. Being in the Army was something that I had always wanted to do. Going back, there used to be a TV series called Combat with Vic Morrow, and of course a couple others, 12 O'Clock High and so forth. I grew up on those, and along with Rat Patrol, and I've always wanted to serve.
Great. Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Riviera Beach, Florida, actually.
Excellent. So you were born and raised here?
Born and raised in Florida, born in Lantana.
Excellent. So was I. Why did you join?
I wanted to be a part of something that was larger than myself, and I think that anyone that serves in the military, whether it's Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, you know, it's someone that really wants to give back, and that's really what I wanted to do.
Excellent. Why did you pick the service branch that you joined?
Well, that's an interesting note. I went when during my freshman year at Tuskegee Institute, and that's what it was called at the time. Now it's gone on to be Tuskegee University. But I really wanted to be a pilot. And I actually stood over in line. At that time, you physically went to various desks to get cards at that time, computer key punch cards for courses that you were taking. And I was standing in line in the Air Force ROTCs in front of their desk and wanted to join that. And I told the Air Force individual, the Air Force officer was there, told me, asked me why did I want to join the Air Force, and I told him I wanted to fly. And at that time, I, as I am now, I was wearing glasses. And he basically said that, at this particular point in time, Air Force is, you have to have 20/20 vision, that you will not be able to fly. I just want to tell you that up front. And at the table, right next to the Air Force guy, was the Army guy. And I don't remember the individual's name, but the Army officer that was standing there was saying, well, we grant waivers, and we've got helicopters and fixed wings, so you could be a pilot in the Army. And I said, you know what? I'm going the Army ROTC route. So that's really it in a nutshell. But I wanted to become a pilot at Tuskegee because of of course, the stories of the famous Tuskegee Airmen.
Excellent. Do you recall your first days in service?
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. As we all, when you go to college, you kind of get into that college mentality. And being a college student, it's tough to make that transition sometimes. And I was given a regular Army commission right off the bat, which basically means that as soon as you're commissioned, you're on active duty. Versus most officers that go through ROTC are generally reserve officers on active duty, and even though they get their commissioning at graduation, they have to wait until their particular officer basic course before their active duty actually starts. So I graduated on December the 18th in 1981, and I had to report the very same day to Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama, the same day. And if memory serves me correct, I believe that was either like a Thursday or a Friday or somewhere around there. But anyway, soon after getting there, there was a weekend. And, because I left in haste to get to Fort McClellan, I had left some of my school things from my different, trunks and things of that nature back at Tuskegee. And I figured that would be a great time to go down to grab those things that upcoming weekend. Well, the first weekend that we had there, one of the other officers that was there wanted to have drill, wanted us to march around that first weekend. And I said to myself, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going back to Tuskegee. And I did. I drove back. And upon when Monday morning rolled around, I guess I got a rude awakening, because the captain that was over our course, his name was Daniel P. Shea. I'll never forget him. He was an infantry officer. He summarily called me into his office and literally gave me one of the greatest tongue lashing / chewing outs that I'd ever had in my entire life. And that was my welcome to the real world. You're in the Army now.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your boot camp and your training experiences.
It was very, very interesting. As a chemical officer, you are trained in both the protection and the utilization of nuclear, biological, chemical, and radiological weapons throughout the military, to include what the military, and particularly the Army, term is flame field expedients, building and making napalm and things of that nature. So that's what the course basically entailed, and I want to say we were there for around 17 weeks or so. I think it was, of training and everything. But that was very, very interesting to go out, to practice decontamination exercises, to go to the radiological labs, and to practice and, in theory, put everything together that it would take to make a nuclear weapon. Also to go through the processes of making, again, napalm and setting it up and actually utilizing it outside with either TNT or C4 and setting those devices off. So it was very, very interesting, coming from my humble background to be able to experience and do those things. So.
Do you remember your instructors?
Yes, as I stated earlier, the lead class instructor was Captain Daniel P. Shea. He was an infantry officer, and he had come in contact with many chemical officers through his career. And what he wanted to do was make sure that we were prepared for any combat arms type environment that we would be put into. And again, as I said, as a result, he made sure that everything that we were above par for all of our training, and that included definitely the physical aspects of it, because nothing hurts the credibility of a young officer more by not being able to be as physically active as the soldiers in the command that they're around. But it was not only that, it was also getting us ready, even at that early point in time, for command, and teaching us that we needed to make those sacrifices. Even though you were an officer, when you walked into the mess hall, you just didn't jump in front of the line of all of the soldiers there. You know, you were there because of the soldiers. So those soldiers got to eat, and you know, as an officer, you're the last one, you know, the last person to eat in any environment after the soldier said, because everything is for the soldier. And he really drilled that into our heads, and I really thank him for it.
That's great. Any other instructors you remember?
We had there were others, and to be honest, my memory's a little foggy about now. But we had some excellent non-commissioned officers that were there, and I can say one of the non-commissioned officers that I met there was Michael Sullivan. At that time, I believe he was a staff sergeant, E6, and that's where I got my first platoon time. He had he was a platoon sergeant in one of the training companies there, and to get us ready, that was one of the things that Captain Shea did, was to farm us out to the training companies that was there so we could get some platoon time in and see what it would be like to be a platoon leader. And he happened to be my platoon sergeant. And Sergeant Sullivan led me through a lot of trying issues with the platoon and guided me in great directions, gave me some great coaching on a lot of things there. And I mentioned him because later on in my career, I ran into him again as a company commander.
This is a really open-ended question. How did you get through it?
You know, we all kind of took each day one day at a time. You know, it was very, very stressful for a lot of the individuals because, again, when we're dealing, you know, the chemical officer's course itself, in addition to being physical, is very, very mental. A lot of in-depth calculations. We didn't have the computer programs and calculators that you have now. So in radiological aspects of it, various vehicles transmitted or allowed so much particular or percentage of radiation up through the bottoms and sides of vehicles, and we'd have to do complicated calculations such as if you've got a vehicle, let's say at that time M60 or an M1 tank, and the vehicle is going through an area at, you know, let's say 20 miles an hour, and, you know, 10 miles of the area that you're going through, you're receiving X amount of gamma radiation. At the end of the route, how much radiation will be anticipated that the soldiers would have absorbed at that time. So it's things like that. Also from the radioactive cloud standpoint, looking at the wind directions, wind speeds, every 10 to 20 feet up into the air, where all the particles are going to go, where they're going to land. Likewise, the downwind patterns of any of the biological or chemical weapons that would be utilized, where they're going to end up, where's the hazard going to be, how large of an area you got to evacuate. So it's a lot of mental things that you have to do. And the tests themselves were just as intricate as that, and again, it was just applying a lot of those skills there, and a lot of the soldiers, a lot of the other officers there, we stayed up at night, and we helped each other get through it. You know, there were a lot of late night, just like in college, a lot of late night cram sessions, but we got through it.
Sounds like my college physics class.
Oh, it was bare. It was bare.
Okay, we're on to segment 3, experiences. Did you serve in any war, or were you served during peacetime?
It was peacetime. They called it the proverbial Cold War. So,
Okay.
it is what it was. We You could see the bad guys. You saw what the bad guys were doing. A lot of the things that we did was to keep the bad guys guessing.
Good. Where exactly did you go?
Again, training aspects were primarily Fort McClellan, outside of Anniston, Alabama, also to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And Fort Sill, that's where I received my training in the, at that time, the Army had nuclear weapons. We had tactical nukes. And that's where the home of the Field Artillery School was. So there we learned how to employ both the chemical weapons that we had at the time through cannon artillery and missile-delivered artillery. Also the nuke weapons. We had 155 millimeter delivered nukes and chem weapons. We had 8-inch nukes and chem weapons. And at that time we had a missile system that was called Pershing. And we learned how to employ all of those and the various Air Force ones also, because it was a, believe it or not, it was, if we were to utilize that, it would be a well orchestrated kind of an orchestra. You know, certain weapons can be delivered at certain times, certain weapons could not be fired through other weapons, nuclear clouds and so forth. So it was learning all of that, and I learned all of that at Fort Sill. The and then again, in between, the major assignments were Fort Ord out in beautiful Monterey, California, with the 7th Infantry Division. Initially getting there, we called it the Undivision, but that's a whole nother story. And then from there over to Germany, to Nelligen outside of Stuttgart, and there we went to various other military installations for training and for field work.
So, do you remember arriving, and what was it like?
Getting to my first actual duty assignment out at Fort Ord, it was a rude awakening. As I mentioned earlier, it was called the Undivision, and it was called the Undivision for a reason. Because coming out of, you know, this was 81, no, actually it was 82. It was 82, and by the time I completed my officer basic course, it was 1982, and I want to say this was getting into the summer or so forth. But anyway, this was after the President Carter years, and during the President Carter years, or the Carter administration, there was an extreme drawback with the military as far as funding. And this was the early days of the Reagan administration, had not really gotten funding pumped up. But when we got there, I was going through the equipment issue point, they call it the CIF, Central Issuing Facility. And, you know, I'm thinking Army, even coming out of my officer basic course, you know, we had, you know, the rucksacks and everything to go to the field and everything. And what they basically gave me was a wooden footlocker. And I'm just like, okay, so how am I going to carry all my gear to the field and everything? Oh, you're going to carry it in a footlocker. And which was true enough, because none of the units there had tents. We didn't have tents. There were just a lot of the tactical things that you would normally associate with a military unit we did not have. And vehicles themselves, and I forget what the authorized level of strength, what they called it at that time. I know it was numbers from ALO 1 to ALO 4. But we were way down on the totem pole. It was kind of a cadre type of unit where you had a select number of soldiers, officers, and NCOs, and you didn't have enough soldiers for all the equipment that you had there. A lot of time that soldiers spent, it was rotating from motor pool to motor pool, making sure that the vehicles were painted, no rust on them, and they looked good for, again, that during the Cold War, so that when the Soviet satellites came over, we looked like we were a division that were ready to go someplace, but we really weren't. So, but that changed later on, about a year or two later, when the funding really started kicking back in. And we went from being what was known as the 7th Infantry Division to 7th Infantry Division Light. And individuals started showing up, and we had just about every major leadership position in there. There was a Ranger qualified soldier there, from squad leaders to platoon sergeants to platoon leaders. It was, to me, in the end, it was everything short of a full Ranger division. And very, very highly skilled, very, very effective. At that time, again, we still had in the early days, we still had the 8-inch and the 155 millimeter howitzers, and part of my duties there was in the Division Artillery, to ensure that the soldiers were trained in the employment of those special weapons, those nuclear weapons. We had a nice little training facility where we had the mock-ups of those weapon systems, and the soldiers then would go through the procedures of actually putting them together and learning how to employ those. I was also the emergency action procedures officer. And when you look at those movies and they show, quote unquote, the two-man control materials where they have the codes coming down and you have to authenticate the codes and two people have to do it, that's basically what I did, and that's basically what I trained all of the soldiers to do, because again, all of the weapon systems had various locks on them, and to get to decode the actual unlocking of that, and to be able to unlock that was definitely a two-man control thing there, so that no one individual could get access to either a chemical or a nuclear weapon in the U.S. arsenal.
So you did a couple of things there that you explained, but if you wouldn't mind just right here explaining what your job or assignment was. All the different ones, because you sound like you had a few of them.
Yeah, I was the chemical staff officer, and working in the Division Artillery under Colonel Fred Gordon. He was the Division Artillery commander. At that time, we had 3 battalions of field artillery. Initially, we had 2 battalions of 155s, and we had 1 battalion of 8-inch. Later on, they were all downgunned to 105 as we transitioned to the light infantry division concept. But we had the 155s, and those were the M198s. These were towed howitzer pieces. My job specifically was to make sure that the soldiers also were trained to defend themselves in the event if the enemy were to use nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons against them. So we had fun doing that also. We had also in the Brotherhood of the Field Artillery is the Air Defense Artillery. And there was 1 battalion of Air Defense Artillery there, and I believe they were 151 or 88. But what I would get from them was they actually had, now which is commonplace on the battlefield, they had the remote control aircraft that they would use to shoot down and for air gunnery type practice. But they were ingenious. Some of the soldiers there were able to rig like smoke grenades on the bottom of those. So when we were in the field, I would have those guys to come out and to fly their remote control aircraft and release the smoke as a simulated chemical attack against my artillery units to evaluate them, to see how fast they could get their protective mask on, to see if they could get their chemical detectors and go out to detect for which agent had been employed against them and so forth. And I have to say, when I first took over, they were trained, but by the time we left that particular position, they were definitely highly skilled and highly trained and ready and highly motivated to accomplish the mission.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences. Oh boy, I think you got more than one.
Yeah. The most memorable one, I guess, that was kind of funny in the beginning, was one of the exercises, and this was while I was the chemical staff officer with the Division Artillery out at Fort Ord. Again, being a young lieutenant, we used to say, full of piss and vinegar. At the end of a lot of the training exercises, we'd have, especially in artillery, you'd have extra munitions and things. Not necessarily the munitions going down, but extra powders and so forth. So we'd burn those off, the propellants. It was one of the exercises, and we were down, I believe we were down like Fort Hunter Leggett or Camp Roberts down in California. And we had some extra artillery simulators and some powders, and I burnt those off. Well, what I should have done was definitely alert everybody to what I was doing, and I did not do that. So we set those all off, and it was like early evening. So the flash and the bang and everything could be seen for a good little ways away. The actual end result was that everyone thought there was a huge explosion and there was a fire and everything. And this happened at the same time that Colonel Gordon was sitting down to dinner, and this was a little ways away from him. And he, of course, called the alarm for everything, and only to find out that this was something that was created by one of his lieutenants, one of his staff officers, and he, of course, had them to round me up and bring me before him. And I guess that was my second summarily tongue lashing that I got in the military. So, but it was something that was very, very memorable. I always remember rather. I wish I could forget it, but the other thing that was memorable was actually taking over my first platoon. After leaving the position as a staff officer, went down to the 590th Service and Supply Company, and they actually had a decontamination platoon assigned to them. And it was a weird association. It was a platoon that belonged to the 18th Airborne Corps out of Fort Bragg, but you could not have a platoon by itself, so they were assigned to this S&S company, which belonged to the Army's First Corps, or I Corps. You couldn't necessarily have a company by itself, so that particular company was wrapped up into the 7th Infantry Division's Medical Battalion. So, needless to say, when there were details, ash and trash details that came down within the Medical Battalion, if they didn't want to do it, they gave it to the S&S company, and if the S&S company commander didn't want to do it, he tried to shove it down to the decon platoon, which left for a real lack of morale of the soldiers. They had been, in my opinion, they had been abused. Because the chemical unit has capability of hauling large amounts of water, they were being utilized late evenings and at nights doing things such as watering plants on the installation, cleaning parking lots, washing down the side of buildings, getting rid of cobwebs, things of that nature. Which led to a lot of disciplinary problems. The lower soldiers would go into the clubs in the evenings, and of course, the other soldiers from other units would make fun of them. Fights would ensue. MPs would be called. First sergeant would have to go to the MP station to get soldiers out of the break, out of the jail, and so forth. So, upon taking command of the platoon, I utilized my contacts that I had within the artillery and within the infantry side of the fence and started generating some real-world missions for those soldiers to go out to conduct. And as a result, once those soldiers started conducting real-world missions and utilizing them to conduct decontamination and simulated radiological missions, the kind of the ash and trash taskings went down because, again, you couldn't give us an ash and trash tasking if we were out doing a real training mission. So as a result, esprit de corps and morale went up. Those incidences of negative things happening also went down. And I miss those soldiers, and I really, really love them.
That's great. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yeah, I received a couple. The only real medal of note was the Army Commendation Medal. Received 2 awards of that. Other than that, it's the various letters of commendation and various citations. We were lucky enough to put on demonstrations for various heads within the Department of Defense and showing them the capabilities of the Army's Chemical Corps units at the time. Also, while we were in Germany, that was when, we arrived in Germany, I want to say, in February of 1986. And if you look back in memory, in April of 86, something dramatic happened in the Soviet Union, and that was Chernobyl. Once Chernobyl's reactor, and it was like reactor number 3 or number 4, went critical, it spewed large amounts of alpha radiation particles in the air, which was carried aloft by the winds. I actually had, at that time, in Germany, went on to become a company commander there. But long story short, I assisted in the assessment of how much radiation actually reached into West Germany at that time in Western Europe. We actually had teams throughout the German and European countryside doing air and water and ground monitoring to see what type of radiation that we're getting. They were also at the airports and the train stations. But I was given a citation for that also.
Excellent. Wow. So you're over there, General? Okay. Our next segment is about life while you were in the service and how it went. First question, how did you stay in touch with your family?
You know, at that time, it's not like it is today, I guess, where you get all these soldiers that are getting on the internet and everything. We basically did the old-fashioned calling in letters. Primarily on the weekends, either I would call back to the States or my parents would call overseas to Germany, and that's how we would do it there. When we were out in California, again, it was no big deal. It was still just the time difference because my family's on the East Coast and that was West Coast, so it's a 3-hour time difference. But when we were in Germany, it was, I don't remember the actual time lag there, but it was definitely considerably more than it was in California.
Okay, what was the food like?
Food in the military was great. I had an opportunity to eat in the mess hall several times. Basically, as a platoon leader, as a company commander, actually had soldiers that were assigned to the mess hall, and so it was one of my duties to make sure that the soldiers were being well fed and everything. So there, and also likewise when we went to the field, those same soldiers that were assigned to the mess hall would go to the field with us. The food was good. In the early days, we still had, that was the C rations, and we transitioned from the C rations, which were the canned rations, to the modern day MREs. Then they also added another one, which were called T-packs or tray packs, which were huge packs of the same type food, but each pack would feed 40. If you had a main course, it was supposed to be enough to feed 40 people and so forth. So, but all of it was very, very good. It was interesting when I was out at Fort Ord, and at that particular time, that's when Wendy's had the commercial about where's the beef. And as a staff officer, you get assigned various additional duties, and I had been assigned as a staff officer to do what is known as a reporter survey. Basically, you conduct an investigation to find out what happened to missing things or why certain equipment malfunctioned and so forth. But needless to say, about that time, we had a case of steaks that came up missing in the mess hall. So I was assigned to find out what happened to the case, and every time any of the other officers, the senior NCOs would see me, they'd always look at me and they'd go, "Hey, Lieutenant, where's the beef?" So yeah, but the food was good.
That's funny. Did you have plenty of supplies?
As I stated earlier, when we first went out we were out at Fort Ord with 7th Infantry Division, no, we did not. Again, there were no spare parts for the vehicles, there was no fuel. Again, we had lots of paint. And from the 2.5-ton vehicles to the 5-ton vehicles, soldiers painted them, made sure that they looked good. There was no real money to go to the field, which is why when I was given my initial issue, I got a foot locker, because when we did go to the field, we stayed in barracks because we had no capability of staying in the field. But again, all of that did change once funding started ramping up, and we started getting those vehicles ready, getting them on the road. And once we started doing that, we found a lot of problems from those vehicles, of course, sitting for so many years. A lot of dry rot, tires would blow, seals and gaskets on the engines and everything. But in the end, when I left the military in '89, it was ready to go.
Did you feel pressure or stress?
Yeah, we got, while in Germany, as a company commander, the 11th Chemical Company, we were responsible for all of southern Germany. Again, as I stated earlier, we had a robust radiological monitoring capability. And as such, we had what was known as a NAIC mission. It was a nuclear accident incident control mission and also a chemical accident incident control mission. What that basically means is at that particular point in time in Europe, we actually had chemical and nuclear weapons on German soil. And anytime nuke weapons were, when they went into the igloos where those weapons were, we were notified. And I actually had to have a team that was ready to fly away within 5 minutes of notification of an accident. And I had to have a ground convoy on the road within 20 minutes. During both when it was real and when it was simulated, and in between, sometimes you didn't know, if it was real or simulated or whatever. But you had various evaluators that would always come down to look at you and evaluate you with that. And it was not a percentage thing. It was a go, no go. And if you were a no go, it was career ending. It was bad news. So, I'm proud to say, we passed all of those through flying colors and everything. But that was the stress environment that it was. There was no room for coming up short. So what that meant was we constantly had to have our soldiers in my platoons constantly trained and ready to accept whatever mission that came our way, no doubt about it.
Wow.
And again, one of those missions were Chernobyl, and then later on toward the end, the soldiers helped with the prep work in what was known as Operation Steel Box, Golden Pheasant also. But those operations are when we really started packaging up the chemical weapons and nuke weapons that we had in Europe and shipping those out.
Excellent. Was there something special you did for good luck?
I had one of my idols, I guess, was Patton, and I kept one of his books near my bedside, along with the Bible. And for good luck, any time that my phone rang in the middle of the night or in the office there, and it was an alert or something, I would always stop and read one of the most memorable moments that Patton would have, and also read a passage from the Bible before I would make a decision and move on and everything. So to help me be able to make the right decisions that needed to be made.
Excellent. Oh boy. Now something tells me you're going to have a very good answer for this. How did people entertain themselves?
Oh, it were various ways. Soldiers, I tell you, no matter where you go around the world, soldiers will be soldiers. And to me, soldiers entertain me because they entertain themselves. I remember we were out at Fort Irwin out of the National Training Center, and we were evaluating one of the units out there. And I walked up to one of the foxholes in the middle of the night to see what the soldiers were up there doing and just kind of checking in on them and everything. And believe it or not, the soldiers had captured a Gila monster. Okay? They had him staked out, and they were throwing him food and everything. That was their entertainment to keep themselves occupied. And I'm just like, okay, you guys realize that this guy is poisonous, okay? So, it's just things like that. But other than that, really active in the intramural sports. A lot of the bases that we were on, especially when I was in command and as a platoon leader, we would have an intramural football team, basketball team, baseball team, you name it. And it was very, very competitive. Normally we'd go against, of course, some of the other units on that particular installation. And it could be rough, especially in volleyball. Volleyball was definitely, it was like guerrilla rules type volleyball, smashing of balls straight into people's faces and everything. But it was definitely the intramural sports kept most of the soldiers occupied and entertained.
Great. That sounds like fun. What did you do when you were on leave?
We traveled. We definitely traveled. While we were out in California, anytime we got leave, we really did not come back, let's say, to the East Coast. We traveled up and down the West Coast, to see what we could see, whether it was, of course, at that particular point in time, we had never gone to Disneyland, so it was like we're going to Disneyland one time, we get up to Yosemite, go out to Vegas, and go out to the desert, go hiking, go up to Lake Tahoe, get skiing in. So we do that. In Germany, it was just like let's hit the road from our apartment. We actually lived in a small German village. Did not live on the Kaserne that we worked on, which was Nelligen military barracks, or Nelligen Kaserne or barracks, but. From our front doorstep in a little town called Eichtal Neuenhaus, I mean, we could drive 45 minutes south, and we were in downtown Zurich, Switzerland. So, 45-minute drive going to the west. We were across the border in Strasbourg, France. 45-minute drive going toward the east. We were either on the outskirts of Augsburg, Germany, or depending upon how fast we're going in the Autobahn, on the outskirts of München, Germany, or Munich. So whenever when we took leave, we traveled about. We either drove or we take bus tours going down into Italy, and just really made utilization of our time in the military. And I think that's one of the greatest things that the military does afford individuals when they take advantage of it, is just the aspects of travel, not only with the official duty part of it, but also in the downtime to be able to go and visit parts of the world that you normally would not be able to go to.
Fantastic. I agree. Again, another question I'm afraid to ask. Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual event other than the Gila monster?
Yeah. I have to go back to my officer basic days, and when you're in officer basic, the NCOs they're training you, they really get a kick out of pulling the wool over the eyes of the newbies, the brand new lieutenants and everything. And we knew this, and we try to anticipate what's real and what's not real, and what's going to be a prank, so that we can we know it. And some kind of way, these non-commissioned officers, these sergeants, were very, very industrious, and they could come up with the greatest little pranks to pull on us. And let's say on a topographical map. Well, on a topographical map, it's divided off into various squares. We call them grid squares. And we had an elaborate numerical way of being able to determine where you were on a particular map and everything. Well, anyway, these sergeants got the idea of we were in class one day, and it was just like, Lieutenant, you got to go down to Captain Shea's office and pick up some grid squares real quick. And they say it fast, and you hear it, but you don't hear it, and you run out and everything, and you go down to the supply office, or you go to the captain's office, and they're sitting on the table. Someone has elaborately gotten one of these topographical maps, and they've cut all the squares into squares, and they have them in a box. So you've just been sent to get a box of grid squares, and you didn't even realize it when you left out of the classroom to go get it until you saw it. And it's like, another one that they pulled on us was, and everyone that's dealt with radios over time have probably know what kind of squelch is, and it's just that static that's in the background we're out in the field. And they're teaching us about these radios, which are all new to us, and we don't know. They're just like, okay, yeah, if this happens to it, then you get, you change the battery on it, and then after a certain amount of time, you change the station or change the frequency, or if you get this and that and everything. And while you were out in the field one day, where we were, we kept getting a lot of background squelch and everything, and so, one of the NCOs asked one of the other lieutenants, go see Sergeant such and such, this radio's not acting right, it needs to be oiled, it needs some squelch oil. So, again, the lieutenant gets up, runs over to the sergeant, asks him for it and everything, and, as soon as he asked it, the other lieutenants around, everybody just burst out laughing, and the sergeant, believe it or not, had a bottle. It was actually a bottle of water, but on the bottle of water they had put a label, squelch oil. So it was another one of those gotcha moments where the NCOs were able to get you. You thought about it afterwards, and you was like, I know there's no such thing as squelch oil. I know there's no such thing as grid squares. But those are the kind of practical jokes that were typically played between the senior officers and the non-commissioned officers against those that were very new to the military or new to a particular unit. So.
That's funny. I knew I'd get a good story out of that one. Okay, do you have photographs?
Yes, we do. I have to look for them, but I know we've got some. So.
Are they mainly of people or the places you went? Did you use that to document or just to as?
Yeah, basically they're photographs of places, and they're also photographs of the units. Some of the decontamination exercises that we did. Also, the soldier's life, motor pool, things of that nature. I've got some videotapes, which are on the old VHS, of the soldiers in Germany. My unit, the 11th Chemical Company, actually conducted some of the first aviation decontamination missions. And that was something that had not been thought of, really. When you have, let's say, for example, a helicopter, in a combat scenario, helicopters, especially Army, like Apaches, are flying at or below tree level. And as a result, the downwash of the rotors, sorry about that, the downwash of the rotors will pick up the dust and everything that's on the ground, and that will actually contaminate the aircraft, especially if you're flying through a contaminated environment, either a radiological contaminated area and or a chemically contaminated area. Those same helicopters and aircraft would be coming back to what was known as a FARP, a forward area rearm and refuel point. And the process, or the thought process, was that what we really wanted to do when they came back was to minimize the amount of contamination that the armament crews and the fuel crews would be undergoing. So as soon as they would come into that forward area rearm and refuel point, we would then spray them down with a liquid decontaminant, primarily a watered down solution of bleach, and to remove most of the gross contamination off that aircraft. And this is keep in mind, this is why that aircraft is still operating. Rotors are still going. If it was the A-10 Warthog aircraft, engines are still running, and we're decontaminating the hard points, the points where the rearm crews would actually be touching to put the ordnance into. Also the refuel points where the aviation fuel individuals would then refuel that aircraft. So we're going in, doing those, and then the aircraft then is hovering or moving to the next station, which would be that refuel or rearm, and then back into the battle. So I've got definitely footage of both Blackhawks, Apaches undergoing those, and A-10s undergoing the same type of operations, because the Apaches and the A-10s used to work together as JAT teams. There was the joint attack team. So you would have the Apaches that go in, fire up a particular area. The A-10s would swoop in right after them or before them, also to suppress the area. And both of them really would be coming back to some of the, in Germany, some of the predetermined rearm refuel points at the same time.
I love those vehicles too, by the way. The A-10 is just, I love the Warthog.
It's a beast. It's a beast.
Did you keep a personal diary?
No, I did not. Just kind of kept it in my head and took pictures.
That's why we're doing this, I think, a lot of it. All right. The next segment is about after your service. Mm-hmm. So just a few questions here. Do you recall the day your service ended?
I do.
Where were you, first of all? Where were you?
Actually, I'd come back to the States, and I officially left the military at Fort Jackson in South Carolina. I had to go there for demobilization and everything. It was surreal to go there, and 1 minute to be an active duty officer, and then after your paperwork is signed and stamped, and you get your DD-214, now you're a civilian, and you're not wearing a military uniform again. After serving from 81 to 89, wearing a uniform every day, to going to not wearing one every day. It was a little shocker.
Interesting. What did you do in the days and weeks afterwards?
Really kind of relaxing down, decompressed. One of the things I wanted to do was to spend more time with my family, and particularly my son. While we were, let's see, our son was born in 2000, not 2000, but in 1985 out in at Fort Orden, California. But while we were in Germany, I was in command, so I spent a lot of time away in the field, different operations and things. And so I missed a lot of that, and I always felt guilty about it. So that's one of the things that I did initially right off the bat, and I think it's paid good dividends and benefits for me personally and us as a family. Our son has gone on, and he's now picked up the proverbial guidon. He's serving in active duty militaries over in Afghanistan. Went to West Point. So we definitely thank him for his continued service also.
Absolutely, absolutely. Did you work, or did you go back to school once you finished?
Went right to work.
That's right.
Went on board with a little-known organization. It's called Eastman Kodak Company. So,
Oh, that's just yeah.
And was in their government sales division. Basically, got to work as the manager for their eastern region for DoD business. Managed everything that Kodak had at that time, from Maine down to Virginia, out west to Ohio and Kentucky. Kodak had 16, at that time they call them lines of business, but Kodak, in addition to the civilian consumer films, the professional films, they also had blood analyzers and copying devices, and just all kinds of different things, security ID badging, sides of the fence. But I basically helped the individuals in those sales divisions to be able to sell effectively to the federal government, and particularly Department of Defense.
Excellent. Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And do you continue any of those relationships?
Yes, I do. To a small degree, I do. Some of the relationships that I value the most, and I don't utilize them, and I don't stay in contact as I guess I should. But the first commander that I served under, Colonel Fred Gordon, later on went on to become a 2-star general, major general. He was his last assignment, I believe, was the commander of the Military District of Washington. Have maintained contact with him over the years. Some of our professors of military science from Tuskegee, General Donald Scott, we've talked to him a couple of times, but not as much as probably we should. Some of the non-commissioned officers that served under me have made contact with them, and they have definitely have come in handy, because a lot of them have gone on to do bigger and better and great things also. So it was a great career, and it's been a great life.
Great. Did you join a veterans organization?
Yeah, I'm a member of the American Legion. I'll have to admit, though, I'm not an active in the post, but we are definitely a member of the American Legion. We definitely support everything we can via mail.
Excellent. Excellent. We got one more segment.
Okay.
You up for it, or do you
Definitely.
need a break? Or
You're good.
let's go. All right. This is later years.
Okay.
In closing, what did you go on to do as a career after the war?
Basically, I continued to leverage everything that I learned in the military, from the leadership aspects to with regards to being a chemical officer, being trained in nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. I have, I guess I've more or less capitalized more on the biological side of the fence now. Later on now, I've been into the pharmaceutical sector. Right now, I am a neuroscience medical consultant with an excellent organization, and it gives me a great satisfaction to be able to help individuals. I talk to neurosurgeons and helping them to come up with solutions for individuals that are suffering from cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, and post-stroke individuals. But more importantly, right now, a lot of those same neurosurgeons are working with a lot of the soldiers that are coming back from the conflicts in either Iraq and Afghanistan that are suffering from traumatic brain injuries. So through that, I get to work with those neurosurgeons that they're actually seeing and to help come up with great comprehensive care for them. Because these are definitely some of the greatest warriors since those warriors that we sent off during World War II. These kids today, I look at them. I've had an opportunity to go over to Walter Reed several times, and just to see the faces and everything, and see the sacrifices that they've made with the various loss of various limbs, it's outstanding. It's very, 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 very sobering. So the time that I put in the military is nothing. It's insignificant compared to what these kids are doing today.
Absolutely right. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war and about the military in general?
Yeah, a lot of people. I guess one of my sayings is a lot of people stateside live life through rose-colored glasses, and the military, especially during the Cold War, going up along the old Czech border there. And to actually see someone standing over there with guard towers, to actually see the bad guy, that was sobering. That not everyone likes you. While we were in Germany, that's when they had the Labelle disco bombings, which prompted Operation El Dorado Canyon by President Reagan, where we went in, we bombed Libya. But so that showed in that terrorist incident that U.S. service members and U.S. citizens were not safe. They also had the Bonner Meinhof gang. They had the Red Brigade. Those individual organizations were responsible for killing several soldiers while we were stationed overseas for their ID cards to plant bombs on the installations. It was sobering to find out that, again, that not everyone likes Americans, no matter where you're at. And our military does an excellent job in protecting us and keeping citizens of the United States isolated. And as a result, a lot of people kind of take that for granted. We've never had, up until I guess it could be argued, September the 11th, we have not had a major attack on our shores. We've not had to make the sacrifices that individuals throughout the world have had to do. And I take that into account whenever they start talking about reducing the force structure in the military, to reduce our posture, everything. It sounds good in principle, but there are a lot of bad people out there in the world. And if it was not for the U.S. military, we would not be able to enjoy the life that we have here now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What kinds of activities does the American Legion do or have?
Some of the things that we've done, of course, I call it the hometown greetings. It's the greeting the soldiers at the airports when they're coming in. That has been one of the mainstays that the post conducts. Other than that, it's typical fundraisers, rides for a lot of the disabled veterans, providing things such as fundraisers to get like wheelchair vans, also just whatever unmet needs that a soldier or his or her family might need for something, because a lot of times insurance, VA things, they don't cover certain little things that would make that disabled veteran more comfortable, or that disabled veteran's family a little more comfortable. Everything from just being able to assist them if they want to take their family to Disney World or something. It's just those type of things.
Do you attend the reunions?
No, I have not. I have. I guess we kind of do things online now. There's a great website that several individuals that I've served with, we all kind of meet up on from time to time or send little messages, and it's called military.com. And on military.com, you can put in your various units that you were assigned to, and it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like a military Facebook. And when other individuals go into there, let's say if they do a search under the 7th Infantry Division and they go into the Division Artillery side of the fence, they can look to see who else served there and see if they see any names that they know, and then they can send little messages to individuals that they recognize and so forth. And so we keep in contact that way.
That's great. Didn't realize they had that. That's excellent. Okay, now, I know you're going to have a great answer for this one. How did your service and experiences affect your life?
As I kind of alluded to earlier, it's been very, the military has had a very, very profound impact on my life, on my thinking. Whatever I do, I guess I'm always looking at how different things can be utilized to help people out. Because again, from the modest beginnings in the military, it's been wanting to give back to the citizens of this great country that we have, being very appreciative of being born in the United States of America versus any place else in the world. And likewise, whenever anyone that I come in contact with, I try to leave them or help them and to instill upon them a sense of also patriotism. Is like now with the economy the way it is, a lot of people think things are bad. Well, it's really not bad here. It's bad, but it could be a lot worse. So, and just to look at those positive things, and I guess that's the biggest thing that I could say, the biggest impact. The military has helped me to be able to look at things in a positive light. Because one of the things that we were always famous for in the Army, and particularly in the military, it's a can-do type of attitude. There's no mission, there's no job that cannot be done. I was an airborne trained soldier, and one of the things about being a paratrooper in the military is that you're trained to adapt and overcome tremendous odds, because no matter how you cut it, as a paratrooper, you are dropped behind enemy lines, and you're outnumbered, you're cut off. You've got to fight and hold what you have until the larger forces get there. So it's like that today in the world, in business, or dealing with other individuals. If they're what the typical person I would think that probably does not have military training will normally associate as a mission or job that's too tough or can't be done. The military gives you that mindset that no, this can be done. We just have to figure out which direction and how we're going to coordinate to do it. It can be done. Anything can be done. So.
That's right. Wow. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys for putting together, and working with the Library of Congress on this project. This is phenomenal. Because I know, with our veterans from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, there are a lot of interesting stories out there, and a lot of those stories will go away, as those individuals pass away. And it's just neat to be able to capture some of the essence. It's one thing to read about history in a book, but to see someone that's actually been there, done that, got the T-shirt that's lived it, it's very interesting. It adds that tangible aspect of history to it.
Excellent. Thank you. Very much for all your service and all
Thank
your
you.
time. We really do. And I think we are done.
All righty.
That was great.